I'm Bob Delacruz. I'm an English composition and literature instructor, but I also have the honor of being the co-chair for the Presidential Search Committee. So first of all, thank you for being here. Your attendance shows the importance of this event. This is an opportunity for us to get to know the candidate, and also for the candidate to get to know us. Now let me just go over the procedures. First of all, I'm going to be reading a very short introduction of Dr. Todd Treat. Then he will say a few words, maybe 5 minutes or so. Then we'll go ahead and go into the question and answer period. The forum is scheduled for 1 hour from 1:30 to 2:30. However, we have reserved an additional 30 minutes for student-only questions. So at 2:30, we want the questions to come from the students. Please stay and listen to the student questions and also the responses from Dr. Treat. And that would then go from 2:30 until 3 o'clock. The forum is right now being live streamed and taped. And the live stream location is www.scctv.net. We want and need your input. All of your input is anonymous. So there are paper comment forms that were given as you walked in. If you can finish those when you're done, just go ahead as you exit the auditorium. There is a box. But if you need more time with the paper form, you can just go ahead and put it in a sealed envelope and bring it to the president's office. And we also have an online comment form, so you can always just go to the website. So let me go ahead and read to you a short introduction to Dr. Todd Treat. Todd has over 24 years of experience in higher education as a faculty member, dean, and vice president, and is committed to the idea that developing human potential is both really satisfying and a great investment for individuals, families, and communities. Todd began teaching chemistry at Parkman College in Illinois and quickly realized his passions for improving college teaching and for increasing interest in science among underserved students. Todd's career-long pursuits around professional development and inclusive excellence began in his time as faculty, and he eventually found that he could have a broader systemic impact as a dean of academic services. Through his 5 years as dean and combined 8 years as a vice president for academic and student affairs, Todd has tried to always build up those around him, analyze data to make good decisions, and drive great results, and always toward completion with quality and equity. Under Todd's leadership, Tacoma Community College has maintained Achieving the Dream Leader college status, created an empowering culture around faculty discovery, and expanded early Achieving the Dream work in English and math as part of its Pathway to Completion initiative. I give you Dr. Todd Treat.
Well, thank you and good afternoon. I really appreciate the opportunity to both be here at South Seattle College as a finalist and to have spent some wonderful time with your colleagues this morning. It's been a little bit whirlwind. We've spent time on the New Holly campus and the Georgetown campus, and of course here on the main campus of South Seattle College, and later this afternoon we head off to the district, so that'll be interesting too. I wanted to open with just a couple of remarks. I know that forums are often richest when you have a chance to ask questions, and full disclosure, I can hardly see because of that light, so I'll just sort of wave, and thanks to those who are also tuning in via the live stream. So again, my name is Todd Treat. I am from Central Illinois. I grew up in a town of 1,600 people with no noticeable families of color, surrounded by cornfields. My dad was a journeyman carpenter, my mom a hairdresser, so I can appreciate the great apprenticeship work that's going on here. And as noted in my bio, I've progressed through the ranks in higher education, including a short stint at a Research One institution doing applied research on community colleges and collaboration and that kind of thing. So it's been a wonderful journey to get to this point in my career where I can stand before a college and say I am interested in and willing and able to be your president. So I really just want to convey to you that when I look at South Seattle and when I've learned about what you're doing well, going back to things like iBest, going back to one of the largest apprenticeship programs in the Pacific Northwest, going back to excellent transfer and professional technical programs, I am aware of a deep history here of innovation that continues today. And I'm also aware that you're going through rather difficult times, rather difficult financial times, times in which under new leadership at the district, there's an effort to determine what's the right balance between differentiating and integrating the district. And so I know you probably have a lot of questions about that, but one thing I can promise you, I've always been an institutionalist. That means that every institution I've served in, I advocate for to the best of my ability, and as your president, I certainly would do that both in the community and at the district level. So that's a rather perfunctory remarks, but it gives you a little sense of who I am, and with that, I'd love to open the floor for questions.
So the way that we'll do it is we have two wireless microphones, and it is hard to see when the light is shining on you. So Johnny and myself will be going up and down the aisle, and then just raise your hand or just let us know, and then we'll pass the mic over to you. However, because I'm the MC today and I'm up here right now, I get to ask the very first question. Let's see, I actually wrote it down. Okay. South Seattle College consists of very hardworking, but also fun-loving faculty, staff, administrators, students, and community partners. We are very proud of our college and proud of what we have accomplished and what we continue to accomplish. So Dr. Treat, I'd like to ask you, what is it that you learned about South that attracted you to this college? Why did you decide that you wanted to apply for the presidency here?
Well, thanks for the question. It actually began with a conversation with my dean team. I have two deans whose names you might recognize, Joe Shannon and Annalee Brauberger. And so as the opportunity came for me to think about opportunities, as I do with my team on all things, we discussed what are the great opportunities here in the system, and of course your name came up. And so you should know that your colleagues who have worked here at South, and by the way, even Kim Ward, who's another dean, has spent some time here at South, they value your can-do attitude, they value your entrepreneurship and focus on students. And so I'll be honest, at first I hadn't thought so much about South because it's a commute up here to the big city of Seattle, and yet I feel really at home here. So there is an interesting mix here at South that wouldn't be present at North or Central or TCC for that matter. And that is these mix of professional technical programs and certificates and transfer that really serve a local and economic need. And there's a real value behind that. And sometimes we lose that. We think as community colleges, we get a little focused too much on transfer, or we get a little focused too much on what's happening at the state level. You really are serving your local community well, and that's something that as your president, I would hope to continue. Other questions? I'll start asking questions too, you know, so, yes.
Hi, my name is Sol Mendez, and I'm the program manager for the Center for Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity. I wonder what your work would look like working with our Associate Vice President of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And I wonder if that work would include the Center for Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity.
Mm-hmm. Well, I certainly appreciate the question. For those of you who may not be familiar, we're living in very interesting times where the winds of national politics question who belongs and who doesn't in our country. And we know when we look in our local communities that we have individuals from all backgrounds, all ethnicities, races, gender identities, and so forth, who belong here in our community. And one of the things I'm really proud of at the state level and at TCC is that we have, as a state system, adopted the principles of equity, diversity, and inclusion, that we are putting equity at the center of our guided pathways work, that the commissions, including Instruction Commission, which I chair, spend time at every one of our meetings talking about how we can foster programs that bring ever greater inclusion and equity to the work. We have ongoing conversations about how do we have a faculty and staff that best represent our community. And you're really to be applauded as an institution around your efforts there. Your community is, your student community is 55% students of color. And you are on the path as an institution to having a faculty and staff that represent that. I know you're about 25 or 30% on average. Numbers alone don't really tell the story, though, and part of why it's so important to have a Center for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion and an executive leader who has a focus on that work is to continually remind us that we have to go deeper. So some of the things that we've done at TCC about going deeper include having our Student and Academic Services team, which are the deans and directors, work together through the intercultural development inventory and then debrief as a team. They include having continuous conversations or research processes while trying to maintain a focus on local autonomy, continually looking at equity as a lens through which we try to make great hires, including conversations and professional development around culturally relevant pedagogies, thinking about our implicit bias, and certainly thinking about privilege. And at that point, I should say the obvious. I'm a white male. And so I certainly have benefited from privilege in my career, and I'm aware of it. And so I spent some time in my early career as a faculty member working through those processes. I went to the Intercultural Institute in Oregon as a faculty member in the early 90s, which may not seem like a big deal from Washington State, but I was in Illinois at the time. Really evaluated what we were doing in the science fields to ensure that women and students of color not only felt welcomed in those classrooms, but were reflected in those classrooms. Worked with my colleagues to try to ensure that we had inclusive hires. And so one of the metrics which spans my career that I'm really proud of is that my own personal hiring record reflects the communities of color that we need to include in our faculty, staff, and broader campus community. I take that very seriously, and I would just ask you all to think back over your own career about whether you've even tracked who you brought to a campus, and as important, what have you done to help retain those individuals who bring needed talent and richness to our campus community. Now, I lead all that up, I still haven't even answered your question. It turns out that the district is doing something really meaningful in assuring that there is an associate or assistant vice president with the same job description at each of the colleges in the Seattle system, with a dotted line report to the district to assure that that work is being deployed across the entire district. But it's very important to recognize that that person will work directly with and reporting to the president of the college. I would argue that the CEO of a college, the chief everything officer, includes equity. If we aren't willing to stand up and be part of that process, if we aren't willing to champion that work, then the work of an AVP for EDI becomes ever harder. And so my job would be to try to make her or his job better and easier. Thank you. Question?
Good afternoon, Dr. Treat. My name is Joyce Allen, and I'm the Dean of Enrollment Services here. So let's say we give you this job opportunity and you come in and you see things that you love and things that are working really well, but then you see some things that aren't going so well and need to change. Can you reflect back on a change job situation when you've come into a new role and you've seen something that you need to change? How have you gone about that, and what can we expect from that kind of aspect of you?
Well, it's a great question because you're always asked, well, what's one thing you're going to change? And most finalists will say, well, I'm going to start by listening. And it's true, I will start by listening. But I do think it's important to recognize that the onboarding process for a new president should include an entrance plan. I'm a qualitative researcher by training, and I think it's really important to get with communities of you in small groups and basically go through a series of focus groups. And so what I would do as a new president is engage you in what you care about, what you see as needs for improvement, and what your goals as an institution might be. My staff, if they're listening from on the other side of this, are now laughing because gains, gaps, and goals is how we do our program review. But I do see that as a useful structure for how to identify some themes. And the question is, once the themes are there, what do you do with them? I'm pretty communicative, although I can't say the word. And I would really want to bring back to the campus community writ large those themes once I identify them. So let's say as a goal within the first 3 months, we do a lot of listening, and 3 months in, we'd start to identify some themes. Your data tells stories already. And so, I have looked at things like the SSI data. I've looked at things like SESI data. I've looked at the climate survey. I've looked at some of the planning documents at both the South level and the district level. And so I have some early indicators of things that may be themes. But I just don't think it's fair to come in with a predisposed idea because those numbers don't tell the full story. And so I really would want to know from you how those numbers reflect what's actually happening. So I could come in and say, yes, I'm aware that there have been some programs that have been cut in the past, and by the past I mean the last year 7, and that there are programs under consideration today. How did you get there? What matters? How does the college move forward and get past a period of retrenchment to a period of growth? So these questions are complex and contextualized, and I really want to match the data with what you're saying and then communicate it all back in. Thank you. Sir.
Welcome, Dr. Tree. I don't know if I got this. There we go. Welcome to our campus.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Hickey. I'm full-time English and creative writing. I'm from Belleville, Illinois. So I have 2 questions for you. Are you a Cardinals fan or a Cubs fan?
You're going to make me answer now?
Yes.
I have been a lifelong Cards fan, but I was there opening day for the Cubs when they won the pennant. So I guess you can say I'm a
I
traitor.
take that. No, that's pretty good. I'd like to hook you up to a polygraph, though. But anyway, I'm going to accept that. My question to you, serious question to you, is about union representation. And if you could share a little bit about your philosophy of working with staff union, faculty union, and the significance of that.
Well, as I mentioned at the outset, my dad was a journeyman carpenter. I didn't tell you that full story. He later took over his father's family business, and so he moved from the union to management. But what I watched was generations, literally, of families move through the apprenticeship program and onto my father's business and remain with that company until it went under, in the downturn. So I have a great appreciation for both sides of a conversation. And that's really where I would like to put the emphasis. I negotiated faculty contracts as a faculty member at Parkland. As the junior faculty member on the negotiating committee, actually. And I negotiated later that same faculty contract as an administrator. I negotiated the faculty contract at Richland Community College. And most recently, we negotiated the Tacoma Community College faculty contract in an interest-based bargaining format at a retreat over 3 days. Now, anyone who's negotiated knows that it couldn't have happened in 3 days unless there was a wellspring of trust and a wellspring of prior work that had gone into that before we went on that retreat. But the conversations happen all the time on my campus. The conversations about work quality and about the needs of employees and about trying to ensure that those get addressed, and if they can't be addressed, why, which is as important as meeting the needs themselves. So, my approach really is to start with good language and then to administer that language in such a way that there's a spirit of trust. If you were to look at the faculty contract at TCC, which we negotiated, it's not heavy on words, it's not heavy on prescription, it's really heavy on principles. And those principles, I think, are how we move forward as communities together. And lastly, we talked a little bit about this with the screening committee this morning. But if it's administration and faculty, if it's administration classified, if it's administration in the exempt union, as opposition, we've really failed to see the bigger good, which is this is South Seattle College for students, and there are 4 different groups that happen to apply their work into that. So we're really all about the students, and if we do that the right way, I think that we can administer those contracts in a way that leads people to the best possible satisfaction.
So bargaining in good faith.
Bargaining in good faith, yes.
Thank you.
Hi. Could you describe your experience or involvement with Tacoma upgrading to PeopleSoft CTC link? 2-part question. And then the second part, how would that shape your involvement should this position be offered to you as president of South Seattle, knowing that we would have to implement PeopleSoft CTC link?
Get to implement.
Get to.
May I ask who you are and what
Oh, sorry. Cody Hyatt, Director of Fiscal Services in the business office.
Yeah.
Not an English guy.
So, financial pillar is the toughest one with CTC Link. You probably know that. And so, I'll just say it has continued to be a really rough thing for us. IT management is never very easy. There's even a full chapter in a book about Stanford implementing PeopleSoft that sounds like our experience exactly. I implemented DataTel at Parkland. I didn't implement. It sounds like Al Gore. But we implemented DataTel at Parkland. I'm familiar with Banner, Genzabar. So these systems all come out of a box in a particular way, and then they have to be configured in a way that meets the end user needs. And the real complication for the State Board of Community and Technical Colleges is not the out-of-the-box product. It's about trying to configure these things in such a way that they work for all of us. So I was actually asked a similar question this morning. My suspicion is that once other colleges come on board, there'll initially be a period of really great distress as the glitches get worked out of the first wave coming on. But subsequent to that, I see that the system will begin to optimize. And so really the principles that we applied when we went live that first quarter, and we had the huge financial aid lines and no one's bills were correct and all of that, was find ways to get students into the classroom. Walk them there if you have to. Use paper and pencil if you have to. And once the students are in the classroom, just give them all the love and attention you can. And if that happens, I know I'm oversimplifying, especially since I'm talking with a fiscal person, but when that happens, the college's suffering will be temporary. But if you don't do that and the students leave, then the damage is permanent. And so what we've been able to see at TCC is that that damage was temporary and that we're starting to come out of it. I'm happy for a follow-up, but or not.
I think you covered it.
Okay.
And my question is, you come from a single college. What kind of challenges do you foresee with a district, being part of a district?
Well, it is a particular challenge to prepare for an interview when your stakeholder groups vary so widely. I will say that from the outset. So just to imagine the day, I start with a typical screening committee that includes both South Seattle faculty and staff and district folks, and then meet with the South Seattle executive team, and then meet with the unions from South Seattle, and then come to this forum around South Seattle, and then shortly I'll leave and it becomes a district interview. So that tells you a little bit about what mindset shift one must have if the first thing I want to explain is I'm going to have your back as your president. But I report to a chancellor of a district. And so that tiptoe is one that very few people will have experienced unless they've been at this level in a district setting. And within districts, there are wide ranges of centralization and decentralization. So it turns out that Seattle colleges are relatively decentralized compared to some others where deans may actually be deans over both campuses. I'm thinking of Pierce College, or where there's much more of a command and control structure that's centralized. And so I do know that the questions that you all are asking about where the future of the district lies have with them some fear that that centralization process, if it moves in that direction, will lead to loss on the part of South Seattle. What I've read indicates that the processes that folks are trying to centralize relate to things like HR and IT and fiscal. But the things that matter in the most interpersonal way around things like student support, teaching and learning will remain campus-based. I can assure you I would advocate for that, that those factors that are interpersonal stay here with South Seattle. And I can also share with you that as an institutionalist, my bias is to support the individual institution first. But I now chair Instruction Commission, and my appreciation for 5 years in the system, and especially having chaired the commission of all the vice presidents in the state, is that there are issues around capacity, consistency, alignment that can really help drive outcomes. We're doing things as a state system through that system collaboration that would not have been achievable in Illinois at my individual colleges. So I would like to think, and I will remain confident, that the district provides a similar kind of support to scale things that are really valuable and to do them in a way that doesn't lead to loss. I'll give you a specific example. The 13th year promise, which is yours, is being replicated at the district level. That's a good thing for students all over Seattle and King County if there isn't loss related to South Seattle. And so as there's things like merging the foundations, there needs to be discussion about what happens to those funds that have been used to support the students here. And I will, again, will remain confident that there'll be no harm for South Seattle, while there's great benefit for those other college student bodies who are benefiting from your breaking innovative ground on that.
Good afternoon, Dr. Treat. My name is Yuki. Oh, hi. Hi. Oh, hi. Hi, my name is Yuki. I'm coming from the business office. I work with the numbers each day, and last week we had a budget kickoff meeting right here, and it was obvious for everyone that we are having a very, very hard time for our getting funds from state levels. And that being said, I would like to ask two questions. In the past, with your higher education experience or outside, have you had any experience of getting funds, sustainable funds, to run your program? Number two, do you have any game plan once you become our head of college?
Could you rephrase the second question for me?
Once you become our head of college, do you have any game plan to get funds from outside?
Yeah, so what we've been able to do at TCC and at Parkland in particular is leverage state and federal grants around innovations that matter for student success. So I'm speaking specifically about the Guided Pathway cohort, which you're part of, the MESA grant, which provides opportunities for underserved students in STEM fields. The Center for Academic Success back at Parkland was an effort to unify tutoring, writing center, individualized instruction, and other features all into one area to provide just-in-time student support. Those kinds of grants provide an opportunity to build capacity in the short term, and then you get a little more time to figure out how you're going to institutionalize it. Many colleges are doing that. You're doing it at a really high level, and so I point to grants as one opportunity. As you know, as your recent Title III, I think, has already been institutionalized. If you're not smart about it, when the money goes away, the services go away too. And so what's really important is to begin with the end in mind around that kind of work and ensure that you're building capacity as you go. The other thing about the allocation model in particular, and I spoke to this with another group earlier today, is it's an algorithm just like any other algorithm. It's intended to provide leverage around behavior. And I know this isn't very exciting talk, but what it basically is saying is that you cannot rely on the student populations of the past to pay for programs of the future. You've got to move with it. You've got to be able to dance as things change. And so the first and most important thing to do as president of South Seattle College with the executive team and the faculty and staff is to understand the algorithm and understand what behavior it's telling us we need to really be focused on. So that's number one. But the second thing is to diversify those revenue streams where there are populations that could be attracted to South Seattle around special programs or opportunities and bring different forms of revenue. I am struck by a relatively healthy number of international students here because professional technical programs have a high degree of transferability when students return home. I think that number could be grown, and that number could be grown specifically here at South Seattle. The Running Start population, candidly, is much lower than I would have anticipated. I think there's something there. I don't really understand why. But, at TCC, we have 1,000 Running Start students. So that is an opportunity for revenue around a different population. Most important, the huge apprenticeship program that you have is an effective onboarding process for adult learners who are in this community. And if that can be leveraged into ever higher degree attainment, whether it be simply that the students move from apprenticeship into the AAS or the AAS to the BAS, that's an opportunity. So I think you have some potential solutions already in your bag of tricks, so to speak, but I would need to get with everybody and listen to what the opportunities and challenges have been before I can be definitive. Thank you. Yes?
Making sure this works. Hi. Dr. Treat, thanks for coming today. My name is Jesse Knappenberger. I'm Dean of Student Achievement here at South Seattle College, and I have a pretty complicated question for you. What are your thoughts on work-life balance?
You might need to ask my wife on this question too, just to triangulate. I'm guessing she'd say something different. Frankly, I think I have really good work-life balance in that I like to play really hard. I take vacations, I take time off, I spend time with my family, but I also integrate it. So it's not really a balance, it's an integration. And anybody who's worked with me would say it's equally likely you'll get an email or a text at 5:30 in the morning or on a weekend than you would in the middle of the day. And for some of you, you're thinking, oh my gosh, she's one of those people. I don't expect a response. It's just when I can do my work. So, if on a Friday I can peel off a little early and go spend some time with my son, I'll do that. But that night I'll be back on to make sure that things are taken care of. And that's a philosophy that I would hope the campus community shares. You get the work done, you work really hard, you really focus on what you need to do, and then after that, hopefully there's a kind of relationship with the campus community that you can also play hard.
Hello, my name is Delta. I'm an international student in SAT and also a member of the United Students Association. And we have a lot of questions, but one of the questions is, how do you support undocumented students?
How do I support undocumented students?
Yes.
Yeah. This is a challenging question because the first responsibility of a president is to limit the liability of the institution. And the second responsibility of the president is to drive equitable student outcomes as much as possible. I could easily be dissuaded that the order of those gets reversed. My only thought is that if something were to happen to the institution that was so catastrophic the doors closed, you can't serve equitable outcomes. So that's the only reason I put them in the order that I did. So what most colleges have tried to do is walk a really careful line of over-communicating our love and support for all students, including undocumented students, and providing resources for undocumented students without stepping over a line that appears to be contrary to federal policy. And so that is a really strange line to walk. I can tell you that as a person, I'm appalled that we are turning away talented members of our U.S. family who may have come here not through any fault of their own, but because their parents immigrated and they were born here. So I think that the idea of the DREAM Act and the idea of its renewal is politically really important, but it's also really important to know that as your president, I would not make that statement, because that's as an official college statement, because that does create some liability for the institution. Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Treat, Stephen Coates White, I'm a counselor here.
Ah, I know that name.
Do you?
I do. I think there might be a faculty member of ssimilar name.
There just might be. Thank you for giving her tenure.
No, she earned tenure. I just recommended it.
So here's my question. You mentioned you were part of an executive team that one could argue you were one of the senior leaders on that team, particularly under the auspices of a new president that came on board. And the executive team did not manage an accreditation situation very well. In fact, where TCC could have lost their accreditation. I'd like you to speak to that, your role in that, and what happened.
Okay. TCC was put on probation for failing to, on an annual basis, provide an independent audit. Now, there's context to that I have to explain. This is going to be a fairly complicated answer, but for those of you who have been in the Washington State system for a while, most of the community and technical colleges were part of what was called a single audit. And that occurred up until about 2013, I think. In 2014, TCC was one of the first colleges expected by the Northwest Commission of Colleges and Universities to have a single audit. We were, like most colleges, asking the General Auditor's Office of the state of Washington to provide that audit for us. The audit was not completed in a timely fashion by the GAO office. The chief administrative officers who supervised that, I'm going to just name names because I think it's helpful, but ultimately it'll come back to what you asked about myself. The chief administrative officers at that time were Sylvia Barajas, on an interim basis, President Sheila Ruland, and subsequent to that, Tim Gould. So over the period of trying to address this probation, there were 3 chief administrative officers. Over that same period, there were 2 accreditation liaison officers, myself, and then subsequently, direct report to me, Dr. Micah Salahuddin. We, on the accreditation side, did everything we could to describe to the Northwest Commission what was happening, which was that the audit was not being completed on a timely fashion by the General Auditor's Office. And subsequently, we went on probation. The statement that we may have lost our accreditation is, while it's factual, it's a little bit misleading. Colleges do go on warning and probation. It's not as uncommon as you might expect. And we ultimately did complete our audit through an independent firm. And so the college has made the decision, at my recommendation, to go to an independent firm. So we don't anticipate those problems in the future. But it does speak to the real importance of ensuring that you have timely notification when things may not be completed by outside parties. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
May I ask the faculty asked the question, and I provided all this by timeline directly to the faculty.
Hi, I'm Celine. I'm the marketing officer of Pi Theta Kappa Marketing Honor Society. My question is, from a student's perspective, what's your view on classes being cut down and having not enough funds for classes to be offered, and how will you work to solve that problem?
Well, first, I'm really glad you're here. I'm an honorary member of Parkland College's Phi Theta Kappa. My grades might not have gotten me there, but as an administrator, they let me in, so that was nice. The issue of providing adequate courses and an appropriate schedule to students should be foremost in what we are trying to do in any kind of guided pathways work. I call it scheduling for completion. And so when you think about students who are in a professional technical cohort, for example, those students are pretty lockstep. Nursing is a great example. They know their schedule often quarters in advance. Part of the advantage of beginning to frame out pathways for transfer students and other degree programs is the opportunity to be able to say to a student, this class or a class that meets this requirement is going to be offered in 2 quarters and it's going to be at this time. So you can plan way in advance. At Richland Community College, we developed something called the Transfer Academy. And the purpose of the Transfer Academy was stated very clearly. We wanted to have block scheduled classes that would allow a student to complete an Associate of Arts in 4 semesters, which is 6 quarters, going part-time. That was the key part. So we built a schedule in the morning, a schedule in the afternoon, and a schedule in the evening that would allow students to do that. I'm a proponent of that kind of approach. It may mean that over time, faculty decide that different courses should apply within those streams. I call them streams. But that should be choices that faculty within departments make on the basis of what's going to be best for student learning. But what's really clear is in a time of budget constraint, when the numbers of classes that we can offer may decline, they must be around degree requirements first and electives subsequent to that.
My name is Natalie Simmons. I'm a part-time math instructor here at South, and I'm also the AFT part-time faculty president for Seattle Colleges. In our recent budget cuts that we had just affecting this quarter, our most vulnerable employees of the college, our part-time faculty, were adversely hit as a result of those budget cuts. If you were to get this position, how would you work to improve morale and motivation for those most vulnerable in our teaching corps?
This will sound a little bit like a punt, and I don't mean it to, but what we found in CTC Link when we first went live is that morale was, from my experience, an all-time low. It's the lowest I'd seen it in any institution. And a lot can be done around simply walking around and telling people you appreciate what they do. I know that what you're speaking to are things like job security and compensation. And because that was negotiated, it wouldn't be proper really for me to comment on it without seeing the contract itself, which I haven't. But what I do know is that valuing people is both a monetary factor and a factor around valuing autonomy, creative work, being appreciated. And so I've tried to hone my skills around that over time. I believe that if you were to go onto the TCC campus and speak to both full-time and part-time faculty, they would indicate that they see me around, that I value what they do, that I appreciate what they do. As president, that responsibility is expanded to all employee categories on the campus, and I certainly would do my part at South Seattle to convey that to all employee groups.
Hello, Sandy Long, Academic Programs Secretary. My question is almost the same as hers, but it's more staff focused. Mm-hmm. So what we just went through or going through was presented, let's just say funky, and we never quite got what was going to happen. Just as staff members, we'd come to work, and some people found out when they got to work they were fired. Some people I would call on the phone and they weren't there. So morale went way down, or the scare factor went way up. And I know we have some really big waves coming of change, like free college is coming, like 2 years right out of high school. So we're going to have some huge things coming, and they'll probably want to cut funding as well. What I was wondering was what change themes you've had. How do you raise morale of a lot of people who are freaked out?
Mm-hmm. I can't appreciate what you've gone through because I wasn't here. But I can tell you that there was a culture at Fear TCC 3 years ago that was really personal. And I just think that there are a couple realities that we need to face. And one is the sort of the awkward and unfortunate things that happen when funding is in decline. It's easier when things are on the rise and you see growth And so you really have to collectively get together and support one another around that. And that does really go back to the answer I stated earlier. The other thing, though, and I hope I'm not shocking anybody with this statement, but change is going to happen all the time now. This is the new normal. And what I think we don't do enough of as colleges is helping equip people for change, so that people, not change in a direction, change in any direction, right? So what we try to do is we try to plan change, and we try to say we're going to go there and this is what it looks like to go there. More often than not, my experience has been that we don't actually know where we're going, we just know it's changing. So I would work really, really hard as your president to just reassure the campus that change happens. It's neither good nor bad, it just is. And if we're equipped for it and we work together, we're more likely to make the change positive in the end. Yes.
Hi, Dr. Khan. This is Harris Mujib from accounting. I'm a faculty here. And I wanted to ask you, I read your resume and your profile, and it was very impressive. And I wanted to ask you about one thing which is very unique to South, and I'm pretty sure that's the case at Tacoma as well, is that we are a very diversified institution here. We have a target population which is coming from all walks of life, and we have a very diversified mix of students. So how do you plan to immerse yourself completely if offered the job? And what steps are you willing to take when, in the first few months to be a part of this dynamic institution?
There should be an expectation of any new president that they are going to immerse themselves in the activities of the college. So I'll start by saying, to me, that's kind of a baseline. But specifically, as you look at my experience, if you've looked at my vita, you'll know that I've spent time abroad. I did a study abroad in the former Soviet Union as a young man. It was transformational for me. I subsequently found that international work, global competencies, bringing international students to campuses and sending faculty-led study abroads away from institutions is something that I have a great passion for. And in my time, particularly working with Egyptian and Indonesian technical educators, I just found that to be a really natural part of being a human. And so whether it's identifying the student groups, the Muslim American Association or the Korean Student Association or Black Student Union or whatever it might be, I certainly would make myself available to meet with those students and hear their questions and their concerns. And ultimately, there is a proposition that we all need to recognize. If this institution and other institutions are not welcoming and inclusive, they will stop being successful in this new marketplace where students have choice. And so I think South has an advantage that we just have to take better advantage of, which is to communicate how welcoming and inclusive this campus can be for students from all backgrounds.
Hi, I'm Sol Mendez again. Earlier you spoke in regards to equity being part of guided pathways. I wonder what your approach is in supporting folk who equity has not been their framework and mindset when guided pathways is where we are.
I actually think I'm uniquely positioned to try to address some of those challenges, and that's because I was raised in the polar opposite of a community of inclusivity. So there is a kind of perverse safety that's possible when someone who is a skeptic knows that they can come and talk to somebody who knows where they're coming from. And I know that seems really odd to say, but I actually believe it to be true, and my experience has been that it can be true. There are doors I can open that world experts in equity and inclusion could not open because the individual had already closed their mind to the person before they even showed up. And so I feel a social responsibility to that I will continue to work with anyone who is closed to the opportunities until they walk away. There are many in this room who would not need that kind of opportunity from me because you get it. And my hope would be that this whole campus gets it, and then we demonstrate that we get it, and the students see that we get it, and then the student population flourishes because we continue to demonstrate that we get it. But I just think that your question is that there is some percentage of individuals who simply will not see what is really simple to see, which is that the world has changed, and that intergenerational advantages that folks have had can't be the norm in the future. It needs to be that we're all equal and equally supported. Not equally supported, supported unto our need, right? Thanks for the question.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruben Murcia. I'm a biology instructor here at South Seattle College. And my question is for you as a president. What are the top 2 or 3 priorities in your vision for student success? And I define student success as the number of students completing their degree and also those that are ready to transfer to a 4-year institution.
Well, first of all, your completion statistics are actually relatively good, certainly compared to some other institutions I've looked at. So we'll start with that, and I would like to compliment the college on that. What I have not seen is your transfer data. And what I mean by transfer data is not who left, but how are they doing at the recipient institution. So at TCC, we use clearinghouse data. We have aggregate data that tells us how they're doing. We know that we have quality because we know that the students, when they transfer, do equally well, or in some cases better than the native student who began at that institution. So that's an example of a metric I really want to see. But I want to redefine student success as not only completion of our degree, but completion of the next degree, or wage attainment. And so those are 2 kinds of data points that we need to start looking at and collecting. Our entire reason for being as a community college is the transformational opportunity for families around socioeconomic status and around achieving the dream, whatever they wanted to dream. And unless we have that data, we don't actually know. So that would be one thing I might mention. The second thing I might mention, again, it relates back to political times, is that this isn't the campus that students feel safe and welcome on, then the aforementioned outcomes probably can't happen because people will disappear before they get here. So that won't even show up in data. They just simply won't have been here. So I wish we weren't in a situation where we had to spend as much time at executive levels thinking about simple decency and safety and things like Title IX. But it's growing. And so, unfortunately, I think I have to spend a lot of time on that. Accessibility, support, just-in-time support for underserved students who have the potential to be successful. They just need a little extra support. Those are all priorities. There's more than 3 there, or 2, or whatever you asked. But
Dr. Treat, it's Natalie Simmons again. Across the Puget Sound region, many colleges have taken the word community out of their name. And we here at South have many programs that provide services to the community. Some of those in our recent budget cuts were also hit, and overwhelmingly in a negative way, such as our Home and Family Life program. What do you feel about community, and how does that factor in to the value of an institution?
what I feel about community is probably not as relevant as how does the algorithm reward you for it. And I'm saying that kind of intentionally because I'm trying to be a little provocative. The state system and the district system, if it disincentivizes local service, will lead to reduced local service, or the college will suffer. And so, as president, I would advocate for a change in the algorithm so that it really incentivizes local service. Or, if you're providing something that's more regional or statewide in nature, rewards that. And I think the apprentice program is a good example of that. But I am really my roots are in a college that was locally funded. Parkland had a lot of agriculture programs that were subsidized by the community as part of local property taxes because that college needed to serve that community. And my dream would be to be in a situation as president of South where local programs, we can find a way to incentivize them. And it may be that it relates back to something like the 13th year program where it's not state funds that are supporting it, it's another form of funding, but that the community knows we're here for them. So, I certainly would get out there and try to find ways to make that happen.
Hello? Okay. Hi, my name is Lily Allen. I'm the Executive Assistant to the Vice President of Administrative Services here. And I just had a question about you more personally. If you could spend a whole day with your family and you could do anything, what would you want to take them on, like a trip, or what would you like to fill that time? And what's your favorite food?
My favorite food that I do not eat any longer is red vines. I gotta stay away from those. Sounds like we have a debate. We have made it an annual affair to go to Mazama with our kids and to cross-country ski, and it has the added benefit that none of their devices work. So we take board games, and so we ski in the day and we play board games in the evening, and that's been a really wonderful thing for us. So I think we'll continue it.
All right, it is, as I mentioned earlier, we wanted to give some time for more student-centered questions. So it's just a little bit past 2:30. So I want to give priority to the students that are here. And if you have very specific questions that you want to ask the candidate, please do so.
For those that are leaving, I just want to say thanks for coming and investing in your college and taking the time. Good luck in your process. Thank you.
So are there any questions by students or? Okay.
Yeah, it might help if folks are willing to come down here so I can see better. If you're up in the back, I'm having trouble seeing who's talking. So there's students up there. Come on down. Maybe while there's a little segue, and if we get to time at the end, I would love to hear a couple of adjectives from faculty, staff, and students about the college. What are 3 words that come to mind when you think about South? But I won't ask that yet. Let's ensure that students have time. So, any questions from students?
Hi, Dr. Treat. My name is Ricardo Mays. I'm the Inclusion and Diversity Officer here at South Seattle College with the United Student Association.
Your microphone's off.
I don't need the microphone's off.
Oh, no, they need it for the live stream.
Oh, for the live stream?
Just see if it's green.
Push the button.
We're good now?
Yeah, there you go. Just a second.
Sorry about that. Again, hi, my name is Ricardo Mays. I'm the Inclusion and Diversity Officer at South Seattle College. I'm sorry if this was double back with the teachers already. I just wanted a student answer. When we come from Tacoma Community College all the way up here to South Seattle Community College, we tend to be the smaller Seattle colleges with solid student body. So I'm just interested in coming from TCC, why you chose South Seattle Community College or South Seattle College.
Well, I'll start with where I answered this question earlier. There are a couple deans who work for me now who have been at South and think really, really highly of South, and I really respect them. And so I began to look at South from that perspective. But the more I sort of dug into the college and saw the interesting and unique programs that you have here, and thought about the opportunities to leverage what I think are my strengths as a leader around things like problem solving and international, around program growth that's both on the prop tech side and the transfer side around guided pathways. I just really see an opportunity here that requires that the faculty, staff, and students are all engaged and have a can-do attitude, and that's been pretty clear from the documents I've read, and certainly has been consistent with my on-ground experience here today. So thanks for the question. Thank you.
Hi,
thank you for being here today. My name is Tam. I'm the Vice President of the Student Government South. And my question for you is, what is your experience working with the TRIO program?
With the student government programs?
No, the TRIO.
Oh, TRIO, yes. TCC had a TRIO program, and Richland and Parkland both had TRIO programs too. And so while I didn't work in the programs directly, I did supervise them. And what I love about TRIO is that they really make an effort to ensure that transfer students who may not have had the experience can get on buses and go see the four-year institutions that students might want to transfer to, that those students get support on the campus for their learning and have quiet study spaces and extra resources. And so what I've tried to do as a vice president is find ways to put together what happens at TRIO and with TRIO with other programs so that all students have opportunities like that to envision themselves at the four-year institution and to have the success on the campus that all students should have the right to have. So never hands-on in TRIO program, but certainly experiencing managing them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Thanks. Oh, go ahead. Okay, I'm just going to follow up on Tam's question. My name is Monica and I work with Student Life. And you may have covered this earlier. Sorry, I came in late, but we're working on guided pathways. And we were talking to students last week about different models to make sure that students are retained and successful and graduate on time. And so TRIO is a successful model. So do you have some ideas on how then you could implement TRIO on a larger scale at South?
Yeah, so one of the advantages of TRIO is it essentially creates a sense of belonging. There's a cohort there, and there's both curricular and co-curricular activities that can support the student's experience. I think anytime you can replicate that, a sense of belonging, a cohort, and co-curricular and curricular activities, you provide an opportunity for students to see enhanced success. So at TCC, the Men of Distinction program, which specifically is focused on men of color and helping them bridge over to TCC, is in fact a TRIO-based model with curricular, co-curricular, cohort-based supports. The MESA program, which I mentioned that we're just now implementing, will do the same for underserved students in the STEM areas, and including recruitment, which TRIO also helps. The opportunity of a system, I'm going to include TRIO's sister program, Educational Talent Search, in identifying and providing a college-going culture to students from as early as middle school, all the way up and through to enrollment and completion. Those sorts of programs work really well. They're resource intensive. In essence, you're putting your money where your mouth is around equity. Because what they say is that students most in need, students with the least experience, students without the benefit of college-educated parents are going to have some extra resources, and we're going to really sort of hold their hand through the process. And so we know it works, and it is, in fact, a large part of what TCC is trying to do with our Pathway to Completion initiative. That's Guided Pathways for us. It's something that could be achieved here at South as well if the appropriate funding sources can be found.
Okay. Hi, my name is Nympha. I work with Student Life, and the question that I have for you is, how will you support hiring a more diverse faculty on campus?
Yeah, I acknowledged earlier on that when one looks across the system, the proportion of faculty and staff of color at South on a relative basis is pretty high. But if you compare it with the proportion of the student body, it's really a long way off. And so there's a gap in there that has to get met. Because I'm a chief academic officer, I have really high regard for faculty and deans in the selection process and the onboarding process around identifying and retaining new faculty. So I really see those search committees as part of the solution if the faculty and staff and deans have had the appropriate professional development and understand the importance of an intent behind what the institution is trying to do. So I'm a strong advocate for professional development on the front end and creating the conditions where people can make great choices. It also requires partnering with HR to ensure that there's been appropriate recruiting and outreach to make sure that the pool is diverse, so those committees can select from great candidates. But it's certainly something that is important, and one of the things I'm really, really proud of at TCC, we lag behind statistically compared to South, but fully 50% of the faculty of color at TCC have been hired since I arrived. And I'm really, of the faculty of color, not classified staff and exempt. So I'm really proud of that. I think that if the conditions are right, if the intent is clear, and certainly there's a lot of interest in the Washington state system, we can find great candidates. Thanks for the question.
I have another one, Dr. Tree.
Sorry. Again, sorry if you already answered this one. With recurring tragedies happening all over our country, such as the Parkland shooting, we know it's a very serious topic, but it's definitely a topic that we as a student body and we as a community we need to address and make sure that our own are doing well. What have you done at TCC, as well as what plans you have going in the future, whether that's here or wherever you can carry your career going forward, making sure that your student safety, your faculty safety is always the number one priority, and that they always have somewhere safe to go.
I'll ask a question by show of hands. How many of you have been involved in a college-wide lockdown for active shooter drill on this campus? The drill. Okay. At our campus, we couldn't answer that question. I mean, the hands would not go up. And so I think that what you start with is ensuring that students and staff know what to do instinctively for that statistically improbable event. And I need to say that again, the statistically improbable event. So it is also statistically improbable that the Mount Rainier will blow, but it could happen, and what's the harm in practicing just in case? And so I'm a strong proponent of not just tabletop exercises, but actual drills. And I think the more you do them, the more comfort people have around security on the campus. Like South, TCC does have an emergency operations plan. Most colleges do. And I don't know if South has a continuity plan, but as an accreditor, I can tell you that I was out of state at a year 7 accreditation visit last week, and colleges do get asked, do you have a continuity plan? I don't know the answer for my own campus. I don't know if we have all of our systems backed up in such a way that if there were an acute power outage, it would allow us to retain our data. So I'm kind of down in the weeds on all this, but that first question, the fact you were able to raise your hand, tells me that at South some things are happening that are really great to ensure that students feel safe and secure. Other questions?
I have a question. Hello.
Hi.
I'm Carolyn from the pastry department, and currently right now we're having a situation that we might be closed down.
Okay.
And from our point of view, it doesn't seem like any of that information really got to the students. I don't know if you'll have a better plan or if you have a plan for some situation so big like this to go out to the students better, because we've been having customers come in like normal. However, when we're telling them, they're actually in shock that it's happening.
I probably can't comment on the veracity of the program closure piece. Okay, but what I can comment on is the responsibility of colleges to do what's called a teach out. So if a program needs to be cut because there's insufficient resources for the program, the students who are in the program have the right to expect that that program will be concluded for them so they can complete what they came here to do.
That is understandable.
Okay.
However, it's more of a part of letting the student community know. Because as of right now, nobody knew except for us, which we found out on Friday. So it's more of a communication to let the students know what's happening in their own college.
And I understand that, and I appreciate the input. I simply will say that as president, I'll do the best I can to be a great communicator, and that will be at all levels, including students, and certainly if there's going to be a detrimental impact to students for any reason, I would do my best to communicate directly with students around that. And for something like this, if that's in fact happening, I would try to do it in person.
Dr. Todd, this is Harris again. I have a question for you regarding enrollment strategies. I want to know what is your experience in boosting up the enrollments in a statewide college system, and with the turbulence we have with our enrollments, especially here and statewide, and it's partially due to the economy doing so well and vice versa. What do you plan, or what strategic plan do you have in mind to boost enrollments strategically, and also in the short run to increase enrollments in our college and get more students so that our numbers look good, which basically in the long run will affect our budget, and we will be able to balance, in the next couple of years. So what is your plan on that, and how do you plan on increasing enrollments? Thank you.
I'm going to first start by saying we don't choose more students, they choose us. And so if we don't have unique, exemplary quality programs, students will make different choices. If we do have unique, exemplary programs and we don't communicate it where students know about it, students will make different choices because they don't know. And so the essence of strategic enrollment management is really to identify the right programs at the right time for the right students, and then communicate it. I don't have enough context here to know where the enrollments are exploding and where there's a lot of interest and where the enrollments are sort of subsiding. What I do know is at the individual program level, it's not like students just disappear all at once. And so there often are warning signs in program review. Part of the reason that I ask my staff to do annual program reviews, every program does an annual program review. But that program review is kind of a just-in-time reflection. It's not the sort of broad external reviewer type program review, but it's for all the faculty in the area to sit down and go, where are we relative to where we were 3 years ago? Oh, is something going on? What can we do to change it before it becomes catastrophic? Now, I'm not suggesting that any program currently under consideration at South failed to do that, and sometimes catastrophic things do happen, but I'm simply saying that there are three parts to this thing. There's building great programs, there's having programs review themselves, and then there's this college-wide thing we call strategic enrollment management. At the state level, I sit on the Strategic Enrollment Task Force for the Washington State Board of Community Technical Colleges. We're looking at macro data for the whole state. What we know is that the number of high school graduates statewide is going down. So we should not be surprised that the number of traditional students coming to our colleges is going down. We also know that the economy has improved, and so the number of adult students has gone down, and we should not be surprised by that. So if we're in a trough around those two things, we have an opportunity to reflect on the programs and get them ready for the next resurgence of student population. I wish the economy would never decline, except that I do know that the economy will decline, and I know that those students who are displaced from their jobs at that point are going to look for a place to go, and I'd like it to be South. Okay, I asked a question of all of you, if you could give me a couple adjectives about South, something you really value, that you really love about the college. I'd love to hear it.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Great.
I've been here for a while, over 3 decades. What I like about this campus, in particular the past 5 years, is how the administration that has been here has taken a look at where we need to be in terms of our diversity, equity, and inclusion, and begin to put together training for panels so forth, and take a serious look at candidates. And if they don't come up with a decent candidate, they start all over again. I've been around for a while, so I think diversity here is important. And I think the paradigm shift that I would like to throw on the table also is just to meet change when you have to meet change, even though it hurts.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
I was going to say park-like, family, and goofy.
Goofy.
Goofy, really important.
I like Goofy.
This guy. What do you think about working with him?
I've worked with Pete.
She's pointing out.
What's that?
Nobody on the screen saw who she was pointing out.
Oh.
Mr. Pete.
She was pointing at the interim president.
Yes, well, he's vice
Pete.
president, right?
Yes.
You have to work with him all the time.
I would?
And if he answers incorrectly, I'm driving into the district this afternoon.
Oh. Other adjectives to describe South, stuff you're proud of. 4 other questions.
I had another question, Dr. Treat, sorry.
No worries.
We know as students, we know as faculty, students and faculty too, like it's really hard for administrators to get out to the students. We know you're busy, we know it's hard. I think the few times I've seen Commissioner Lords is when we have our panel talk on the night, he's very busy and we know it's very difficult. Well, being in TCC and then going forward, what have you done to be able to be with your students more? We know it's hard to find time, vice versa, to come meet up to the students, but I think it's very important, and my colleagues would agree, to meet our administrators and know who's making decisions for us, and what ways have you done, and what ways do you plan on coming to, whether it's a meeting with the USA government, with TRIO, what ways do you plan on reaching out to the students more?
There's a couple different things. Ask us and we will come, and I think that's pretty much going to be true of any administrator at any level. And so if a student group invites someone to come and chat, they will, and I certainly would. At TCC, we have annual administrator-student luncheons with student government that I actually really look forward to. We do it at the beginning of the year. Student government officers, as they roll over, they introduce themselves, and often they have a couple questions about leadership, or how did you do this, or what can we do to help, and that kind of thing. And it really just creates a sense of relationship that lets people come in and feel like they can come in and make a comment anytime they want to. I'll be candid, for vice presidents over areas, there are times when we get really focused on our stakeholder group. And so, as executive vice president, I probably haven't spent as much time directly with students as I would like. I spend a lot of time with faculty. But that's part of our job. And certainly as president, I see that you're representing all stakeholder groups, and I would make specific time available for students to meet with me, whether it be a brown bag or the aforementioned luncheons, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ali. I'm Secretary for Student Government here. We are in the process of creating the Clean Air Task Force for the smoke-free campus. So my question is, what is your perspective on the smoke-free campus, and what would you do to support it?
Once one gets into policy land, it gets really tricky. And so what I want to say is that personally, I would like to see a smoke-free campus. But from a policy perspective, there's a process that you need to go through in order to get there. And what one means by smoke-free should be defined. So, there are different kinds of products out there. Is vaping considered, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if student government is pushing forward and recommending a policy, I think that's terrific. I know the South has processes that would then take that policy recommendation forward. It sounds like you're somewhere in the middle of that, so I probably shouldn't comment too much on it, but my personal feeling is that you have to have a person's personal health ends where the next person's begins, or something like that. And so I think the idea of having dedicated space, perhaps, it would be a potential compromise, but the idea of a smoke-free campus would be an important one.
Hi, how are you? My name is Angel Dalker. I'm the United Student Association President. I have a question. I know with the culture going on today with the Me Too movement and everything, how would you handle letting out information about sexual assault and harassment on campus and informing students who are affected by this situation, and how would you move forward with that? Would you provide resources and also, make sure that every faculty staff are trained on that? So I want to know, how would you go on that? Because for me, it's all about accountability and making sure that our school is providing a safe place for students, because we're here to learn, and that's something I wanted to know, like, how would you do that?
I really appreciate the question. It goes back a little bit to the statements I was making about a healthy, safe campus, but I'll get a little more detailed about it. Right now, due to federal guidelines, campuses are expected to address Title IX, CLEARE, which is about reporting crimes as they happen, and on an annual basis by federal guideline. VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act. Most colleges that are high functioning have behavioral intervention teams. Many colleges have bias response teams. And all of these are built as almost like silos. And my proposition is they should all be put together. And the idea that there's a steering committee or a supervisory council that looks at a healthy, safe campus with respect to all of that would help ensure that women and men on this campus feel safe from being victimized, and that if they have unfortunately been victimized, they know what to do. And then the college acts quickly in the way it needs to act, both on behalf of that victim, but also for the broad campus community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, are there any more questions?
Hi.
Hi.
So what is your experience with first generation students?
Well, I'm a first generation student. We'll start there. But what I think you have to understand is that there are many different kinds of first generation students. My parents were small business owners. They didn't have higher education, but they did have financial means. And I had other sorts of supports that many first generation students don't have. We have at least 50% of our students who are first generation students, and often first generation students whose socioeconomic means are such that they not only don't know how to navigate college, but they don't know how to pay for it. We have students whose have whole generations of families who don't even value education. And so they're trying to make a difference in their life without the sort of support that others of us take for granted. So a lot of what South needs to do, and what TCC has tried to do, and I certainly advocate for in my role, is helping students know the value of higher education and know that we care about them wherever they come from, and that we want to help you figure out how to pay for school, and we want to support you while you're here, and we hope you stay long enough to complete. And then if that completion means you're going to go on to the four-year institution, help you get there too. And that's really the spirit of the community college grad since its very beginnings. Thanks for the question.
I just wanted to answer your question that you asked about how folk feel being at South. I had the privilege of transferring from New York, from a community college there to here, and was able to graduate in 2008. And I worked here as a staff in the Women's Center, and was able to move up as a program manager within my 12 so years here. And so the biggest thing for me is the sense of community that we have here, which when our students get to know us, they get that sense of community as well, which then supports their sense of belonging, especially in certain areas on campus.
And we know that matters, because when students feel like they belong, they stay. Yeah, thank you for that.
last question.
Hi again. I have a question about lobbying at the state capitol. So if you become the president, do you have any plan for lobbying at the state capitol with the student or staff, and have you ever done it before?
Yes, so legislative advocacy is really important. Legislators love students. They really do. And they love students because they know that our purest reason for being is because of you. And so when you go in groups or even as individuals to the Capitol, they listen in a different way than they might listen to me, for example. One thing I've learned over my years is that it's really important to go before you need to ask for something. So you go just to say hi, you go to tell them about a great program, you go to thank them for something they've done, you build a relationship with them, and then when you're in need, they'll remember you. And so, part of what I would try to do as president is visit with legislators both here in the district and at the Capitol on a regular basis, not just when I want to ask for something. And I would love to take students.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you all. Those of you who have stayed the entire time, I really, really appreciate it. I know that this college is making a huge decision for itself, and I would just ask if you can, please try to come and see the other 3 great candidates. I'm really excited about the future of South. I think some great things are about to happen, even though it might be a little hard to see right now. So have faith in each other, and good luck in your decision. Thank you.
So Dr. Tree, thank you very, very much. I know that this is not the end, because you get to go up to the Siegel Center, and you'll continue to be asked a lot of questions and so forth. But you found out that South is we work hard, but we also are fun-loving and we are goofy. So I want to give you a little memento from South. So this is from me, from the search committee, and really for the entire college. Something for you to remember us by.
Is this a bear or an otter?
We haven't gotten the otters yet. It's an otter bear.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
So this is the first of 3. The next one that will occur will be on Wednesday, same time, same location. You have the paper comment forms, which you can fill out, and if you finish it today or now, you can drop them in the box as you walk out, or you can finish them later and bring them to the president's office and just put them in a sealed envelope, because we want to keep anonymity. And don't forget, there's also the online comment form. And thank you again for attending. And I forgot, I want to thank for all the people who have been watching us through the live stream. And I know there's a bunch of you who were telling us, sending out an email saying we're going to watch you and all that. So thank you, the rest of you that are out there. And hope to see you in a couple of days.
Well, did you get the email, or it hasn't been sent?
Which one?
The email for the form that you talked about?
It's on the South website. You just click on it, and then it'll get you to district, and then there'll be the names, and then you can just fill out the form there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.